Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Grid Slot Gavra Racing podcast. You're joined by Tucson028, myself,
Me, Tiger Assassin.
And me, X-Natty.
and winter is here, everybody. It's the beginning of the Gavra Racing off season, but don't worry, we here at the podcast will still be keeping you up to date with any new news and events that happen around here at Gavra, as well as our opinions on the real world of motorsport. In fact, most of the races being over now gives us a chance to talk more about real world motorsport. So if you did like that part of the podcast, it's going to be coming back. So we're going to kick things straight off with my section, Project Cars 2, and the Renault Megane Trophy final round at Spa-Francorchamps. We had Javier Rand taking pole position again. I know, again, guys. He's done it again. Oh, no, not
fast.
another one. He took pole position again by 1.2 seconds. Stuff from Javier there. Took it, as I just said, by 1.2 seconds from Becerra in third, and faster ended up the top three. And he Spanish lot here at Gavra really seemed to love the Renault Meganes because it was an all Spanish top five for the final round of the season. So there you go. During the race, we had all drivers cleanly away into turn one at the source. Cypher and Kraser. Cypher capitalized, on Kraser and Randalux having a battle with a double overtake and making their own mistakes. Natty, how do you think they did it?
So yeah, it was a good overtake from him. Obviously, when two cars are battling, they will be going at a slightly slower pace. Obviously, taking different lines, one driver on the inside, one on the outside, and they obviously both aware of where they were. Good. It was really good driving skill from Cypher Knight to capitalise Celine, and obviously he was aware of those two possibly being at a slower speed, and was able to capitalise on that battle and just put the car in the right place on track and get the move done.
Yeah, thanks for the insight. As early on in the race, we had 5 cars really nose to tail. I mean, Tiger, as a driver, how do you think that? How easy is it to keep your focus when you're that close to each other for such an extended amount of time?
Sometimes it can be quite difficult, especially you're trying to urge to get past that person, but you got to be careful that you don't go into the back of the person in front, and you just got to try and keep as much concentration that you can, but also try and have that urge and that determination to try and get past the driver in front.
All right, yeah, thanks. There's a corner that caused problems in both the Renault Megane and the Ginetta Evolution race was Malmedy, or otherwise known as Turn 7. A very big accident happened there between Toby and Duke Martin. It looked like they just came together on the exit there, on the exit curve. I think maybe Toby got a bit of oversteer on the inside or something like that, and he just came across the track and unfortunately took Duke Martin with him there. But we'll come to that again later because there's quite a big crash at the beginning of the Ginetta Evolution race. But moving on through the race, a King Quinn with a lovely dive bomb on Kraser into the Fania chicane. I'm going to say it again. It was clean, cutthroat, and deadly. Love that. Thank you, Daniel Ricciardo, race engineer. So King Quinn with a lovely dive bomb there on Kraser, and Becerra made his way past Cypher Knight for 8th place in the closing stages of the race. But carrying on with that damage for Toby, he had a heavy damage on the front end of his car, possibly as a result from that contact, but possibly from something else as well. But he was really struggling to get to the end, but very good of him to soldier on and get through the rest of the race. Good that he didn't just give up. So it shows the fighting spirit there. Javier Ranz then capped off the championship win with a 100% pole to win record, 100%
Oh my
conversion
days!
rate. So 8 races, 8 poles, 8 wins. So there you go. If you're looking for the ideal season, there it is. They say no driver, wins every race, but I guess Javier proved them wrong. I mean, no other driver really came close to him at any point this season, really. He's finished 41 seconds ahead of the opposition at Spa.
That man is quick.
Exactly. Nearly, I guess nearly a second a minute if we're going to do it like that. I think it was an hour and a long race. Yeah. Massive congratulations to him, and nice to see the donuts at the end of the race. Thanks for that, mate. Aguileta and GTS rounded off the podium, and we hope to see all of you back next season for the Renault Megane. That's going to conclude for the final time Renault Megane trophy. I'm going to move on to the Ginetta Evolution, which, unlike the Renault Megane, actually had a bit of a title showdown around the same track, also at Spa, final round. So Lonnie, who has taken the last 3 wins and the last 3 poles on the bounce, made it 4 in a row, taking his 4th pole position alongside Besser, who lined up second, and Mark Hose, Lonnie's HLB racing teammate, started in 3rd. So there's a big title showdown then between Lonnie and Delavan. I believe that had Lonnie failed to had Dalavan won, Lonnie needed to finish in 4th position to win the championship. I'm not sure how it was the other way around, but I know those were the title permutations. I said that right. There was a clean start into turn 1, and they charged up the hill towards Radillon. Besser then took the lead once again, just like in Silverstone. If you remember when he swooped around the outside into the lead, he likes to get the lead early on apparently, but Lonnie did manage to get him back later on. But on the first lap as well, we had a massive crash in the exit of Malmedy, also known as turn 7. It's nearly identical to the Renault Megane trophy, but one thing that maybe distanced it from the other crash was that it was on the first lap. So, there's a lot of cars still coming through Le Combe and through that sequence of corners, and then boom, there's a car on the apex. So it's not great or the easiest thing to avoid. But we had a sort of similar thing happen in the freshman league, Tiger, between Pepelec and Holland Campion before the 3rd or 2nd safety car, I think it was. But can you just tell us what happened there and how it can relate to the freshman league incident?
Yeah, it looks very similar to what happened in the freshman. Both drivers come around the same corner wheel to wheel, and they both went off into the same grass and both hit the same wall. And I think one of the cars went spinning round, and then as he came back around the hairpin at the end, he just too early on the power, obviously, because his tires probably would have been very warm as he was spinning around there. So he was just a bit too much on the throttle, and it span his car around after that as well. But yeah, it was very similar in terms of the incident that happened in the freshman league, and yeah, it ended up in quite a few cars hitting the wall and spinning around there.
Yeah, as a consequence of that, GJ had massive damage on the front left. His light was out. I think he had a lot of suspension damage as well. But it looked like he was really struggling with the race. GJ DM, who also races in the Gran Turismo Sport Championship, had a bit of trouble with some snap oversteer, it looks like. But he was really struggling around Spa. He hit the wall again at the same corner, ironically enough. Although he was kind of an innocent bystander in that first
Yeah.
by the carnage, but yeah, still looked like he was struggling quite a lot with that car and that track. But either way, David then was making his way up through the field quite quickly, and by lap 7, already up into 6th position from his starting point. And then Lonnie managed to take the win, as well as the championship, as well as David, who made an excellent recovery into 2nd place, who's 6th after lap 7. So showing excellent pace there. But yeah, Lonnie did take the win in the championship away from Dalavan. So Dalavan was also our GT3 champion this season. So denying him a 2nd championship here at Gavra Racing, I guess. But well done to Lonnie, and well done to all of the drivers. You've all performed, exceptionally well this season. Hopefully next season we'll have the podcast running straight from the start of the season, so we can keep you up to date with all the championship standings and fights as they go on. But I've only had 2 races in Project Cars this week. My section is over. Now I'm going to hand over to Natty G, who's going to take you through Gran Turismo Sport this week.
Hello, everyone. Thursday was the 9th round of the GT Sport League that took place at the Fuji International Speedway circuits. And just like last week, we're going to start off in qualifying, where Play-Ducci took his 5th pole position out of 5 races. Of the 5 races that he's raced in, that is. So big congratulations to him. Only by 800ths, though, over Tobster, who was showing some really quick pace in his Honda NSX, which is not the easiest car to drive. But not much actually happened in qualifying. All the drivers kept it relatively clean, and there was actually a really close in the midfield. All the drivers qualifying, I think only a few tenths between maybe 4th and 8th or 9th. So it was really close between those guys, and in some cases only a few hundreds and a few thousandths separating some of the other drivers. But moving on to the start of the race, most of the drivers were clean into turn 1. However, on the exit of the corner, Oriol and the Mercedes lost the rear of the car on the curb and unfortunately span off into the path of Woody, and both of those drivers took a little bit of damage, and I believe both made pit stops on the first lap to get that repaired. And on the first opening laps, though, proved to be very entertaining, with thrilling battles for 2nd place between Tiger, Toussaint and Tobster. Most of the overtakes being made down at turn 1 and down the 1.5 kilometre straight, as well as the chicane down at turn 8, 9 and 10. At one point, it was actually 3 wide going down this straight. And the last time we saw a 3 wide moment was at Monza. That was another thrilling race. But my question for you two, Zane, is what actually goes through a driver's mind when battling and going 3 wide down the straights?
don't crash. uh, yeah, if I could actually give a bit of context to that, because I think because Tiger tried to go for a move down the inside at the final corner. I think it was Tiger at the end of the first lap on top.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what that meant is that Tiger then had a bad or worse exit than I did because I took the conventional line. Obviously, he's going for an overtake, so that's kind of what happens. But then I was able to get in the slipstream of Topster when I pulled to the inside, and I had my radar up at this point. If you look at my personal stream, which I'll try and find the link to, maybe put it down below. If you look at it from my point of view, I've got my radar up and I go alongside Topster, like you can just see an arrow swerving in the background, and I know it's Tiger. And I'm like, is he gonna go for this? And I see him go to the inside. I'm like, oh my, this is not gonna corner. And you're thinking, where can I get the other two out and get this position done? I managed to just get it done, I think. But yeah, it's pretty hair raising. I'm sure if you lot up in the commentary box, but for me, it was a bit. You always got to try and keep calm in those scenarios, because the second you start panicking, there's the second you make mistakes. So.
And with you, Tiger, you were battling with Toussaint for pretty much the whole race. What was it like battling with him towards the end of the race?
No, it was really enjoyable. It gave the race a lot of excitement. I tried it down the inside on the final corner a few times. The door was slammed shut on my face though by him.
Okay.
But we'll move by that one. But no, it was a brilliant battle between us two. And I was sat behind him actually for quite a few laps because I was conserving fuel myself. Like, because I thought I'd underfueled quite a bit. But I was saving fuel a little bit, so I was behind him, and I wasn't going for any overtakes, just trying to use the slipstream, And in my mind, I was going, "Come on, T-Set!" I was like, "Get moving," because I wanted us both to catch up to Topster, so we could both have another three-way battle. But no, I had a brilliant battle with him, and yeah, it was a really enjoyable race in the end, and that three wide moment was probably the highlight of the race. But I got quite bullied at the start though, because I went three wide reviews, and then I suddenly dropped so far back after that battle. I don't know what happened, that I got in a battle with Holland and Duke, and then I had to battle with them two, and then I managed to get back past Holland, and then I managed to catch back up to Toussaint and Topster. But it's just that the start of that race was probably one of the most hectic of the season, to be fair. It was actually really, really, really good race.
Definitely. And looking at the midfield of the race, there was a really good battle between Met Boy, who was replacing Jojo Power in the Audi, Simaba and Cryptek. They were all battling for 7th place in the race, and it's good to see lots of clean, fair racing between those guys. Really good moves into turn 1, another common place for overtaking. Turn 8 to 9, another common place where those guys were overtaking each other. But coming to the end of the race, Play Dutchy made it 5 races, 5 poles, and 5 race wins. I wonder if anyone can actually stop that man in the GT Sport League. We'll just have to find out. Topster was able to defend his second place, and it was actually Tiger in the end who was able to get 3rd place, and the fastest lap of the race went to Play Dutchy. But that's all from the GT Sport race, and I now hand over to your F1 commentator, Tiger Assassin.
Thank you, Xaddy and Toussaint. So the only league that we did have running at the moment was the Golden Crown, but I'm going to speak about both Golden Crown races. Going to speak about last Sunday's Sochi race, and then the Sunday that's just gone, the race in Brazil. So in the Sochi race, we had a lot of drama in the first race. On the first corner, there was a big crash between Jetsi and Jutsi. Both of them they seemed to go wheel to wheel down the straight, and then they suddenly just both swerved left. You guys will know what it is. The first the high-speed first corner in Sochi, which is like the DRS zone. Yeah, they both seemed to just swerve left instead of going right into that corner. They went left, and then they came straight back across the track, and there was a lot of damage to quite a lot of the cars. But further into the race, the pole sitter, Boy, who I'll get onto later, but was showing a lot of pace towards the end of the season, had a great battle with you, Nanny, who you were the current championship leader at the time, for many laps in that race. But towards the end, somehow, I don't even know how, there was a huge battle. There was like a battle for like third or something between like Gregster, and I think there was I can't remember who else was there. Jetsi and Jutsi were in there, I believe. But then you and Bequazboy up front now, you were having a battle. But in the end, Gregster won that race on penalties. Natty, you came, was it second or was it third? I cannot remember now.
Third in that
Third
one.
it was, yeah. And I believe, and then Bequazboy came all the way down in 6th place. So he had tons of penalties. But that was the end of the first race in Sochi. There was tons of battles. I recommend go watching that race back. It was really, really good. But the second race in Sochi, Bequazboy got pole again. And this time there wasn't a big battle into turn 1. It was down in turn 2, the tight right-hander where Edmund just seemed to just go diving it down the inside and in the Alfa Romeo and went hit into Gregster. So wasn't great for Gregster in the second race, but at the end of that, but throughout the whole of that race, Natty, you started in last, and you made your way from last to first. You did a two-stage style comeback in that race. Brilliant performance, but that managed to give you a huge points gap over I think it was like a 39-point gap, I believe it was, over Jetsi. Jetsi was in second, and then there was a bigger points gap to Jutsi in third place. But Dan Schneider was in championship contention, but he didn't have the greatest of weekend in Russia, so that put him out of championship contention. And now in Brazil, Natty again, you just the highlight of the weekend league. As we said, a 39-point lead. So I believe you only needed about 5 points, was it? I think it was to win it. It was something like that. I think it was about 5 points from the 2 races to get the title. So it's a pretty easy job for you. But Quazboy, pretty easy. He only needed 5 points out of 2 races. I mean, that's it. All he needed to do was finish decent enough in the points. But Quazboy, another dominant performance. In both races, got pole comfortably in both races and won both races comfortably. So well done to him. Brilliant, dominant performance from him. But the first race, you saw many, many battles. There was teamwork battles going on between the 2 McLarens. I think they had the McLaren Red Bull sandwich on someone, I believe, and they were just, the one person was defending, allowing the McLaren to attack, and I believe it happened in the second race as well with the Williams team. But we saw Natty again, highlight of these races, started from 9th on the mediums. So you had a lot of chasing to do through the midfield. But in the end, after an amazing performance and a different strategy to the drivers, you ended up getting second after a photo finish with Dan Snyder. Could you tell us exactly what happened and how you came to that decision on the strategy and how you were able to get up into second place in the end?
So I was considering starting on the medium since the start of the race because I'd done a similar thing when I started the previous week in Russia and was able to make up so much time to the drivers when I was on the soft tyres. So I was planning on starting on the mediums, but then I looked at the weather and then it was actually due to rain at the end of the race. So I was thinking if I can stretch these mediums out to, when the rain is going to come, I can just pit straight onto intermediates and not have to make another pit stop for softs. And then we got into the race, and then I'm looking at the MFG and the strategy, and then it had 2 bars of heavy rain and then 1 bar of light rain at the end. So I was thinking, okay, it's definitely going to rain with like the last 5, maybe 6 laps to go in this race. So starting on the mediums helped. Obviously, the first few laps were a bit tricky with the other drivers being on fresh softs compared to mediums. But then, obviously, I stretched those mediums out, as you saw. I went all the way to lap 16 with them. But the rain didn't come down, so I had 2 laps to put in, pretty much 2 qualifying laps on the softs, knock it up into hot lap, and then that enabled me to get the straight line speed on the straights over Dan Schneider and finish ahead of him by 300ths in the end.
But yeah, no, it was the rain at the end. It really, if that had been a 50% race, Natty, that strategy would have been perfect for you. I think if it was a 50% race, but obviously it was a 25%, so there was only about 2 laps remaining. So the game did not, the game did not need you to pit obviously for the inters. It wasn't wet enough on track to do so. But into the second race here. Where on lap 2 we saw sorry, no, we're just finishing off the first race. I've skipped too far ahead here, but on lap 2 we saw Ray Fizz have a big crash which caused a virtual safety car, which made a few people pit, but after that first race Bakwas Boy did win. But big news actually, as we have crowned 2 champions at the end of that, 2 weekend league champions, one for constructors, which in the end, the McLaren won the constructors championship, so well done to them. But the driver champion, as you probably can already guess who it was Exadi yourself, so well done to you for winning the weekend league championship. And it was a dominant performance all season from you. But Quash Boy gave you a little bit of a run for your money at the end, winning everything was nearly 3 races in a row, so it was well done to him. But how are you feeling on that, Natty, in terms of you winning the championship, mate?
Well, I was confident at the start, and then obviously I got the 2 podiums in the first races of Australia, and then Spain was a little bit of a dodgy one for me, but then I just got back into the rhythm. Obviously, it feels just like I didn't think I was going to do it at the start of the season. But it's all about building the confidence. You get that podium and you want to push on for your more wins, more podiums. And then I think the main thing that led me to the top of this championship was just being consistent all season. If you look at my results, I only had probably 1 dodgy result, and that was the second race of Spain. But I think the other driver, because the whole weekend league is so competitive, and there's so many drivers that have matched in speed and pace, that finishing first and finishing all the way down in 6th or 7th is obviously a big points difference, but just being consistently up top is what I think allowed me to get the championship. And it's just great, obviously. And thank you to all the drivers for the amazing season.
Yeah, it was a really, really good season. It was a really good league as well. It was actually a really, really good league, and the drivers very competitive, very clean, and in the end, you managed to win it. But there was another race after that. We did not just end it after Natty won the championship. There was another race afterwards. So many overtakes in that one as well. Too many to talk about. So if you want to go and watch it, the Brazil Weekend League race should be online on the Gavra Racing YouTube channel very, very soon. But in the second race, Bakwas Boy got pole and won that race again. That was absolutely a dominant performance from him. He had so much pace. But I'm going to say this next bit was quite astonishing. There was a huge crash. I mean, it was like a humongous crash. It was massive, but the absolute 11 in the Williams, the car flipped. Now that is rare it's rare in F1, but it's really, really rare in the F1 game. He somehow managed to flip the Williams. Were you able to see it, Natty? Did you see it happen?
I got the perfect view of it.
You said, I know you saw the aftermath of it, but Natty, what happened in terms of, because I thought I'd ask you, because it was honestly, that was an astonishing crash. He genuinely, that Williams flipped.
I don't know. I can't remember what drivers were involved, because I came through turn 4, turn 5, and then in front of me, I see a Ferrari. I see a Ferrari and a Williams, I think, maybe going side by side. I can't quite remember. And then I see a contact between two, I think the Williams and another driver. The Williams has span, and then another person's T-boned him, collected him, and he's gone spinning, flying, and just he's done his own
the car
separate
flipped.
thing.
Me and Joe were stunned. Like it was huge. Like if you want to go watch back, I think I just caught it on the right hand side of the screen of the car mid roll as it was upside down. The Williams upside down there, but it was a crazy crash, and it was an amazing race. Both of those races were amazing. The whole season was. But just quickly at the end, I'd like to thank all of the drivers across all of the F1 leagues for racing and giving everyone such a good show, from the academy to the Super League, all the freshmen and the Premier drivers, the weekend league drivers, and any of the drivers. So just thank you, so much for racing, and thank you to the Gavra's admin team in the F1 and across all of the leagues as well, and thank you to the main man Gavra himself for making this all possible and giving us such enjoyable racing. But the F1 races were brilliant. I enjoyed commentating them. I'm sure you guys enjoyed watching them as well. But thank you to everyone, and I'm going to hand back over to Sane as we're going to move on to the next section, and he will explain a little bit about that.
Indeed we are. So for this week, we continue the trend from last week. So also we're not going to have a driver interview this week because F1 is finally back, everybody.
Woo!
After over 200 days, as you can tell, Tiger is happy. We finally had the Austrian Grand Prix, which took place at the Red Bull Ring. But just to echo what Tiger said before, so big thank you to everyone who has participated in Gavra racing this season, as well as the commentators and stuff like that as well. We will do our best to bring you guys great action, kind of lift the mood a little bit during quarantine. But big thanks to everyone. But we're going to go on to the Austrian Grand Prix. We're going to start with qualifying. Ferrari.
Oh dear.
Now
that's a good word. Oh dear. That's a good way to describe it.
Now, I didn't watch qualifying live. I was working, but I came back and I watched my brother and my dad, who had seen it before while I was at work. And I was in Q2 and I was saying, surely Vettel comes round the final corner with some extra quali mode and, goes into like second or something, or gets out of the bottom 5. I see Vettel round the final corner and he's about 9/10 down. And I'm like, okay, he's in trouble, but it should be all right. But then I see in the drop zone, Albon was still there because he had something went wrong with him on his first flying lap. And then you just see that Leclerc is 10th and Vettel's been knocked out of Q2. And I had no word. I was like, surely not. I mean, the race wasn't much better, guys. I don't know what you thought about it.
From trying to say, I'm not saying it was gonna happen, but I'm not just in terms of Ferrari, but in terms of the whole race. What happened in the race in terms of car performance and car reliability was going to happen because it was the first race of the season. They'd be gone for however long. You know what I mean? It was bound for something like that to happen, and they're going to have teething problems. And it was the first race, but Ferrari, that was not even. I mean, I wouldn't even call that teething problems. That was just
a major problem.
Just a major, humongous problem. That was like. To be that far, like they weren't faster than they were faster on the straights than Mercedes. We all knew that from the last couple of seasons. But in the corners and on most tracks, Mercedes were faster. We knew that. But that race, Mercedes there's no words. They were very, very quick, like too fast, but. Also, very nice for us Mercedes fans, but
right, calm down.
But no, that Ferrari pace was shocking. It was shocking. I don't know what. Yeah, do you have an opinion, Natty?
Well, it's interesting when you hear the likes of Ferrari, and then if let's say you're new to Formula One, you think Ferrari are going to be a big team. You've watched last season maybe, and you see Vettel, Leclerc battling, Bottas, Lewis, Max, and then you see them coming to Austrian Grand Prix, the hype to see whether Lewis will get his 7th world champion and who's going to stop him, and then watching Leclerc and Vettel qualifying 7th and 11th. It's actually From a Ferrari fan point of view, it's kind of it's something you just can't get your head around. Obviously, with Carlos Sainz with his contract to Ferrari, he's probably like, "Oh dear, what have I done?" Ferrari, if Ferrari don't up their game, then well, who knows? But maybe
go on.
we might see a change in the 2022 regulations. You never know; they might have a massive, surprise that they're not showing us, and who knows the future for Ferrari.
It's just be such a frustrating experience for Ferrari fans. Like, that you have the biggest budget on the grid and probably some of the best engineers in the world, but for some reason something just isn't clicking, and it's just and this car has been. This is probably the worst car that Ferrari have made since 2016.
Something seemed really like off. Like something didn't seem right. And what's going to be interesting is I believe are they getting new, what is it they're getting new for the Hungary Grand Prix?
They're basically getting a B-spec car for Hungary, as reports from Italy suggest, and we all know how reliable those are. But in the world of motorsport, massive overhaul of the current design philosophy of the car. I think that's what reports seem to indicate. Hopefully, that will help them get back on par with where they should be. But they turned up with.
They'll look a bit stupid if they turn up and they don't do better. To be fair,
they turned up with,
it's not great when Charles Leclerc goes, we don't have the pace that we did last season when he comes into his interview. It's just not. You already know it's not going to be great at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good of Charles Leclerc to get second in the end during the race, but I think Ferrari have turned up with the deepest pockets here and the fifth fastest car, so something's gone very badly wrong behind the scenes. So, moving on into the race, we had many retirements. It was nearly half the field retired, half the field still raced. You had 9 retirements and 11 finishes, but I think, as Tiger suggested before, that's probably just teething problems. The teams haven't run since winter testing, semi-competitively.
Well, I think
leave it at that. And we had probably still stress testing, things like that. So that's probably
I think also they were saying about, because I think we might get onto this, but in terms of that track, and they were on about the curbs and how the curbs are really damaging the car. There was a lot of engine problems, a lot of gearbox problems. I believe both Haas's went out with. I think one Haas went out with brake. I think it was a brake disc failure. Yeah. I can't remember what the other Haas went out for, but
also brake failure.
Was it? But they're both brake disc failures there, so it's just teething problems, really. I think next season we might see. I reckon next week. Sorry, this weekend we'll see a completely different race. I think.
Yeah, well, hopefully for us Hamilton fans. But anyway, the Mercedes DAS system, or dual axis steering system, some people saying it should be called DASS, proved legal, and after a Red Bull protest on the Friday, I believe it was. But to take you through that a little bit, I've done a little bit of digging around, a little bit of research, and I found that the 2 grounds that Red Bull were protesting over were due to the fact that the suspension arm is not meant to be changed at any point during the race. And I believe there was something about the steering not being to actually steer the car. If you get what I'm saying, like, you're not meant to be able to. The steering rack's meant to do one thing: turn the car. And those are the 2 grounds which they disputed it on. How Mercedes defended it was that because the DAS affects the toe in and out angle of the tires, when you change the toe in angle, the pitch of the car does actually change. So they were arguing that the DAS then does help the car steer, and so it's legal. And I think that was the main ground where they battled Red Bull on, and that's why it was deemed legal by the FIA. So nice to see that the FIA coming down on the side of innovation. But what that, for me, when I saw that Red Bull protest, for me that means that I think Red Bull have some kind of DAS system or something similar to DAS coming on for that car. I think we're going to see it in Silverstone in about 3 weeks time. But I honestly believe that there's going to be some kind of DAS system on that Red Bull.
Can I just say something? What I've been thinking, and what a lot of people have been, what they were saying on there when the F1 was on, right, was that DAS system is not making that Merc car as fast as it is.
Yeah.
That Merc car would still be just as fast without that DAS system, and it's really only to help the tires and warm up the tires, and that's kind of what its main purpose is, I believe. But in terms of around the track, the Mercedes would still be on the pace that it is. And that's why I think I think it's a good idea, the DAS. I think what they've done there is they've thought of a problem which they've got in the car, and they've tried to fix it, and they've done it in quite a unique and actually quite an innovative way. But we'll have to see what happens with it. But personally, I think it's a good idea, to be fair.
Yeah, I think Martin Brundle touched on it when he said that, if you take away Dash from the Mercedes, they're not going to lose 7/10 of a second.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not what's going to happen. I think you had a opinion on it too, Natty.
And adding on to the Red Bull protest, I read somewhere that another reason Red Bull were protesting is because the way that they've built their car, they wouldn't be able to implement the same DAS system that Mercedes have. So their car was built differently to Mercedes, obviously, but their suspension's different to the Mercedes. So that's, I think, another reason why Red Bull are trying to get rid of the Mercedes DAS system. But yeah, it from my point of view, it doesn't actually give the Mercedes any extra speed. It just reduces the time it takes for the Mercedes to slow down due to tyre wear and all those other issues. But that's all for me.
I mean, it feels like it's just like a luxury Mercedes are able to afford to just try out these new systems and stuff. But it's down to the other teams to push the team that's been winning for the last 6 seasons, not down to the team at the front to stop innovating. So, F1's a meritocracy. It's always been like that. So I guess that we're gonna. Well, I'm glad that DAS is staying on. It's a good system. It works fine, and we are going to go straight on into the race then. So before the race, Lewis Hamilton did take a 3-place grid penalty. We're going to gloss over that. We're going to gloss over that, but
I've had enough of Red Bull.
Lewis Hamilton. Tiger's had enough of Red Bull this week.
No, I've had enough of Red Bull. They've annoyed me.
But we're going to continue with our Lewis Hamilton theme as such, and we're going to go straight to the end of the race. Actually, it's a really action-packed race, so I think the highlights are on YouTube and stuff like that, but we're not talking about that. Albon and Hamilton, another incident between those two in a very similar fashion to Brazil last year. I'm going to go to Natty first because I could already hear Tiger boiling over, but I'm gonna go to ex Natty first for this one.
Yeah. Well, the penalty. I'd start with the penalty that Hamilton was given. I think he does deserve the 5-second penalty, not in a harsh way, but because Albon dropped to 13th and Hamilton stayed in second, he will obviously be given a penalty. If Hamilton retired or dropped to last, then maybe the penalty might not have been sent his way. But I've heard many people say different things about the incident, that Albon should have been patient. But in Albon's mind, he is on the soft tyres. His tyres are quicker than Lewis's. He tried it round the outside of turn 4, which, if you remember, Sebastian Vettel done on Lewis Hamilton a few years ago, the same corner. So he's tried it round the outside. I've heard all these things that people are saying if Hamilton just slowed down, he wouldn't have hit him. But obviously, we all know if he'd slowed down, he would have locked up the brakes and caused probably a bigger incident. So, I think it's a racing incident, but I do think Hamilton. Well, he got his penalty, accepted his penalty, and I just think they should move on for the next race.
Yeah, how about you, Mr. Tiger Assassin?
Yeah, same thing.
Same thing. All right, I think from my point of view, what I've heard is I've had 2 things. I heard that Lewis throttled up too early, or that he turned out of the corner. But if you go back and watch the replays, okay, Lewis turns into the corner, all right, and he's still on the right-hand side. He's on nearly as much lock as the car will let him have, or not as much, obviously, as much as you need for that corner. But he stays with the same steering lock until the contact is made. So he doesn't, steer to the left or anything. So that for me was just bogus. The other one is that he throttled up too early and that caused a crash. He didn't throttle up too early. He only touched the throttle after the contact. You can hear that in the audio of the video.
Onwards,
For me,
yeah.
what happened is that Albon tried to go around the outside. Hamilton, they both gave each other racing room, but I think as Albon said, he's on the outside and there's nowhere else he can go. It's up to the car on the inside if they want to crash. But I don't think Lewis did anything, intentional. He didn't turn to left or anything like that. It wasn't him being a sore loser or whatever the hell. What's happened is he's just understeered into Albon. And if you want a similar example of it, it's Japan 2019, Leclerc and Verstappen at the start into turn 2. Leclerc gets, a wealth of understeer and just has nowhere to go and goes into Verstappen. But the FIA showed consistency by penalising Leclerc, and they've also penalised Lewis Hamilton, and they're giving them more or less the same penalties. So, as far as I'm concerned, moving forward, I don't really have any complaints about it. I mean, I am a Lewis Hamilton fan. I'm not going to hide away from that. But for me, it's a racing incident. But the fact is, Albon dropped from 3rd to 13th, and Lewis Hamilton stayed in 2nd place. So you need to give a penalty for that, because otherwise it's just unfair, really, isn't it? But moving on from the incident, we also had Sebastian Vettel not exactly covering himself in glory in this race, going for a move down the inside of Carlos Sainz, I think it was. It was a ex-natty move, really.
Except I don't crash.
But yeah, it looked like he was spinning before he even made contact with the car in front. So just compounding what a difficult time he's had in that Ferrari. He said after the race he was glad to only have spun once. So that's not always it's not great news for the Ferrari guys.
And I noticed with Vettel, I don't know if it was just the Ferrari, I didn't see Leclerc's point of view, but he was struggling quite a fair bit at turn 3, making a few lockups in both qualifying and the race. So maybe he was struggling in the Ferrari potentially with rear grip, maybe.
Personally, can I just say what I think? I think personally, it might be true, but this is it can be a bit of a controversial decision I'll throw out there. I think since what happened with him and Ferrari, right, Vettel, he's just turned around and he's just given up. He's gone. So why, if they don't want me here, then why should I race for them?
Well,
that's an interesting take. I probably disagree with that.
I wouldn't say like he's fully just turned around and given up, but I don't think he's putting 100% into it, because he knows he's not going to be that team next season because they don't want him there. I think if it was different circumstances and if it was different circumstances and he'd chosen to leave, then yeah. But if the fact that the team said they didn't want him, that he's just gone. So why, I'm not going to put in 100% effort.
It's a possible implication of that. I think
it's just go on.
I mean, that Ferrari looks like an absolute dog to drive.
It just looked really bad, to be fair.
And when Vettel struggles with rear downforce, he really struggles with rear downforce. Like you saw in the days of the blown diffuser in 20 when he won all his championships. Really, he was unbeatable. But I really think he needs that rear end stability on the car to feel comfortable with. When he doesn't have that, then it's not great for him, I don't think. But yeah, that's Vettel. But moving on to happier news, Lando Norris got his first podium. Mixed feelings for me as a Lewis Hamilton fan. Obviously, my guy involved in a incident, but my other guy, Lando Norris, managed to get on the podium, his first podium at the same track where in F3 he had I think some kind of mechanical failure with short tire from the lead of the race, something like that. And that first Lando Norris meme where it's just him sitting on the gravel, it gave us his first podium. So there you go, with the poetic justice there for you.
All of that virtual racing paid off.
All of that
him and Leclerc both on the podium.
Lando bot. I mean, even Bottas tried his hand at a bit of racing.
I have to say that George Russell did really well in the actual race, though. Like, he was so close to getting into Q2 with that Williams.
Yeah,
and he didn't have a bad race. He was up into 11th at one point in that Williams car.
Yeah, that the bottom 3 teams there seem to be really close. Alfa, Haas, and Williams. Williams seem a lot closer though this year. Some people even thinking that Alfa Romeo might be the slowest car on the grid, but in race trim that Williams did seem to be a little weaker than it was in quali trim. They both, if you look at the early stages of the race, they both did fall to the back quite early on, and they kind of stayed there until the people, made mistakes, stuff like that. But I think it's a good sign for Williams, though, being much closer to the Q2 threshold than last season. So, big ups to everyone at that particular factory. But we're going to move on from this race entirely, and we're going to go to our predictions for next week. I believe it's called the Styrian Grand Prix. So we're going to go for our pole position, our top 5 in the race, and then biggest shock. I'll go to you, Tiger, first for this one.
Sorry, repeat that again. Sorry.
So we're going to go for our pole position.
Oh, yes. Hamilton to win. I reckon he'll come back, determined as he always is. Come back and put on a good show for us, hopefully, as Mercedes fans. And then in terms of top 5, I reckon it'll be a Mercedes 1-2 if they don't have any problems. I know they're having problems with the curbs. The curbs are quite harsh on that track, actually, it looks like. So a lot of the teams are having problems with it. It was quite funny, actually, when the Mercedes engineers were coming on, going telling them to stay off the curbs, and then they told Valtteri to stay off the curbs, and they said to Lewis, he said stay off the curbs, but he went, well, Valtteri's doing it, so why can't I? It was like two little school kids, like, just, where the teacher comes over and it's like they're telling not to do something, and then the teacher goes away, and then you carry on doing it. It's like, honestly, it was quite funny, to be fair. And then it got serious when he came on. It's like, Valtteri, it's James. Stay off the curbs. You were like, oh no, it's getting serious now. But I reckon Mercedes 1-2. Then I reckon it'll be a battle between. I just don't think Ferrari are going to be up there again. I think it might be a battle between Racing Point and McLaren. I reckon it'll be a Racing Point and a McLaren battle for that top 5 position. And Red Bull, yes. Racing Point, McLaren, and Red Bull it'll be. I reckon Red Bull will edge it over them 2 teams, though. It might be one of the Red Bulls on the podium. But biggest shock, going with George Russell in the Williams. I reckon he might do really good. Yeah, hopefully.
Okay, so George
potentially,
because
he almost got in the points, though. So I'm not far off of an outrageous shock, but that would be quite shocking if he did get into the points. But we'll have to see what happens.
Interesting. So, Mr. X Nally G.
Pole. I'm gonna go with Bottas.
Bottas pole. Interesting.
It seems to be his track. I was gonna say Verstappen, but I think the Mercedes is just dominant in qualifying. So I'm gonna go with Bottas. It seems to be his track. Austria obviously getting pole in the past 3 races, I think. And top 5. I reckon. Well, we didn't actually see any crashes in the race. When I say crashes, terminal damage, like incidents between 2 drivers, if you know what I mean. So I think we're gonna have a few crashes in this race, and so my top 5 are gonna be Lewis. I reckon Mercedes will want him to win the championship. Bit of a shock, Verstappen and Bottas to crash. Ooh. So I'm saying Leclerc and Albon on the podium.
Oh,
with
bold.
Lando and Sainz in 4th and 5th.
Ooh.
And the biggest shock, this doesn't actually fit with my top 5, but I can have as many predictions as I want because it's only predictions. But the biggest shocks for me will be if Ferrari have pace.
Nice. All right, so for pole position, I'm gonna go for Bottas for the exact same reasons as X Natty just said. But top 5 in the race, I'm gonna go Perez 5th, Norris 4th, Verstappen 3rd, Bottas 2nd, Hamilton 1st, and I got 2 biggest shocks. I think first shock, Ferrari won't get 2 cars into Q3. That's my first one. Second one is Albon will retire again. So there you go. Those are my predictions for the Styrian Grand Prix.
Can I put a
which will
shock?
take-
Can I put another shock in there?
Sure, why
Perez
not?
gets on the podium
Okay, there you go. Perez gets on the
because
podium as well.
you know he was looking really quick in that racing point though.
Yeah, I think the medium tire just fell away from him at the end.
Yeah, but he was
Right.
looking really quick in that.
But anyway, thank you, both of you guys. Lovely to have you here all of the time and in most of my casual life as well. Anyway, it's going to be the end of episode 9. If you would like to be involved in the podcast for the coming weeks, for driver interviews, I know next week we're going to have Mr. Atim Granon, your third place driver in the Super League. He will be on next week, and also my future teammate, all things going well in the future.
Depending on what F1 2020 is like.
Oh yeah, exactly. But yeah, if you would like to see any of the videos for any of the races that have happened this week, they will be in the Gavra Racing YouTube channel, which should be in the bottom left-hand corner, unless I've done something very stupid. But yeah, it's going to bring to an end episode 9, everybody. It's been a pleasure having you all here, all of our regular listeners and all of our new people who are just picking up the podcast now. But signing off, this has been me, Tsunoto08.
Me, Tiger Assassin.
And me, ex Natty G.
And we will see you all next week.
Goodbye.